Hello everyone, my name is Tim and welcome back to the second episode of Taking Off the Shades, the podcast. Today's guest is David Scott, who I can call not only a teammate but a friend since moving here to London. We play goalball together, and David and I talk about his path with goalball and athletics, getting to the GB squad and hopefully one day the Paralympics, and what he does now as a fitness coach, and just his journey as being a blind athlete. I wanted to also take the time to say thank you guys so much for the first episode and the support on it. It was truly incredible. And without further ado, let's get into this episode with David Scott. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you for coming, Dave.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, Elephant and Castle, Northern Line, won't get that mixed up again, exit, and just some random guy with a very cute dog walks up and goes, where's the goal ball?
I didn't sound that timid.
No.
But I do remember saying that I was here for goalball, and you said, yeah, you got to talk to Coach. You didn't know if I was meant to be there or not.
Nope, I'd never seen you, never heard of you. You told me, Naki told me about elephants. And I was like, yeah, you might want to let the coach know you're coming. Otherwise, it might confuse him.
I did email. So, for context, I moved here knowing goalball was here, playing goalball in the U.S., but didn't really know how to get involved here. And I knew there were a couple teams. And I was lucky that I got to join the Elephants because I meet people like you and Sharky and Josh and Russ and the whole squad. And I appreciate you guys having me.
To be fair, mate, we're lucky to have you. You're a quality player and a genuinely all-round lovely bloke. I mean, who else would I travel to Sheffield with?
Well, this wasn't meant to be hyping me up. So how'd you get involved in goalball, Dave?
So when I went to secondary school, so I lived in a little town called Gosport next to Portsmouth, right on the south coast, and there was a school in Eastleigh called the Toynbee School, and it had a visually impaired unit in there, so a little building with quite a few visually impaired children, and they'd have LSAs that would come with you to your lessons, bring you enlarged work or braille work if you needed that, and they did an after school club on a Friday, and one of the sports they did was goalball. So when I went to that school, I started taking part in the after school club and first got into goalball through that, and yeah, just started playing it as an after school activity really.
How old were you?
Probably 12 or 13 when I started going to the club, because I still did karate on a Friday for a while, and that was the day they had the club, and then I started doing the club and just moved my karate days around a bit, and that's kind of when I started doing it. So it was about a year, maybe a year and a half into my kind of school time.
I'm going to steal a question from what USABA marketing is doing right now. Would you say, and this is a very bit of a corny question, would you say you found goalball or goalball found you?
Probably more goalball found me, I'd say. It's a bit 50-50 where I think I enjoyed playing it. I still loved football, and kind of throughout my time in school it kind of developed. Like I think it was in year 10, I was a part of that Paralympic show, building up to obviously the 2010 Olympics?
2012.
I always get that mixed up with the
in
World
London,
Cup.
yeah.
Oh, that's embarrassing. I'm from here as well.
Yeah, you got to balance the World Cup and the Olympics, but you had the Olympics here.
That's the one, yeah. So 2012. And yeah, so I was in year 10 and they did goalball as part of that Paralympic show. And so it was our school versus another school. And I got selected as part of my school's team. And that's when goalball started to get a little bit more serious for me. Kind of like all of a sudden I'm aware of these other avenues it goes with. And in Series 2, I was asked to train with the GB men's and women's teams at a training camp, and that's kind of where I became more aware of the kind of Great Britain element of it. So I think, yeah, it was a bit 50-50 where we kind of found each other, and it was just at first just about playing a sport, having fun, and then it kind of just slowly developed over time to something more.
Now, I actually don't know the answer to this question. Did you lose your vision when you were born, or did it come later on in life?
Nope, born with it. So I was born with a condition called, here's a good name for you, oculocutaneous albinism. So white hair, white skin, no pigment in my eyes or anywhere. So I can't produce any pigment at all. So when it comes to when the sun's out, I become a lobster.
Lots of sunscreen.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Factor 50.
And how much vision would you say you've got left?
Supposedly I have about 10% vision, but it's hard to say exactly. So like if I look at you now from where I am, only across the table, I can see what you look like. I can see where your eyes are, but I can't for the life of me see what colour your eyes are. I can't read. I can see the sign to your right. I can see where it says city. It's quite big, but I can't read the bit underneath it.
And you call that 10%?
Supposedly. That's what my
'Cause
mum tells me.
That's about whatever mom says. What you're saying is about what I've got, maybe a little bit less. And I say I've got like 25.
Wow. I think it's a fine one with albinism where you can go either way with it. Like, I'd say mine's got slightly worse over the years, where it's got a little bit more like hazy. Things aren't quite as clear, and clear glass is like my mortal enemy. The amount of times I've knocked over a clear glass or like a plastic fork that's clear because I've not seen it. Or even like poles in the street. I've walked into more of those recently. But then you've got others that I know that they tend to wear glasses and their sight's a lot better than mine. Whether it's just they're more adapt to it, or as a guy I know from uni, his brain just got better at seeing processing the words he read. So it wasn't that he could see more, it's just his brain could process it better. Could be something like that maybe.
Does that classify the whole condition as albinism for short?
Yep. There's multiple types of albinism, and I just have the most common one, and technically the most extreme.
Could the condition progress? Could you lose more vision?
Very unlikely. I think there's like a 5% leeway either way. Like, it can get a little bit better or a little bit worse. Mine kind of got that slightly worse, but I think it's partly because I just gave up with glasses when I was a teenager because they drove me mental. So I stopped using things like that, which helped, and things like with glasses where you've got the tinted glasses. So I stopped using that as well. So kind of done it to myself a bit. But yeah, I don't think there's much room for progression or regression, really.
I wonder if it's, I guess it's different for everyone. If it's easier or harder to adjust to things like going through childhood, visually impaired. For me, I lost my vision at, 11 or 12 years old. So it felt a lot harsher at the time and then got easier. Did it ever feel like it was really difficult at some periods to adjust to anything, or was it just because that was everyday life for Dave? So it's
good question. There were times where I sort of on the phone with my granddad going, "Oh, I hate being albino," but that was more just because it was too hot, and I hated using sun cream, and I hated the sun. And I think for work, it's quite hard trying to find work, and I kind of, since leaving uni, I've kind of felt my disability more than ever, to be honest. But have you ever heard the saying, "It is better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all"?
Yeah.
So obviously I went to a blind college in Hereford, RNC, Royal National College for the Blind, and I know people like you who lost their sight when they were born sighted and then lost it. And for me, that love statement, it's the complete reverse when it comes to sight, where from what I've seen, it's better to have been born with sight loss than to lose it over time. Like, if you think about it, your sight, you've got 5 senses, as we know: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. And realistically, your sight is probably your most relied on. And for so many people, they get so used to having full sight and relying on that sight that even if a small part of it goes, that's their main sense gone, and they have to adapt and learn to kind of use their other senses and rely on other senses instead of their sight. And for so many people, the adjustment's so difficult.
Definitely. And so, we don't, at least to my knowledge, have a blind college in the U.S. where I grew up before moving here to London. What is that process like, going to a blind college? Because you go blind school before that?
No, so my secondary school had the visually impaired unit, but it was a standard secondary school with like an additional bit to it, whereas RNC was specifically for blind people. So all of a sudden you've gone from mainstream to specialist, and it was residential. Well, I suppose being in Hereford, 3 or 4 hour drive, it kind of had to be.
What age is that?
That was 16 to 19, 20, and then they did for a while have something called RTU. I think it was RTU, and then they called it SES. When it was RTU, it was adult learners for 6 months, and SES was the same thing, but 18 weeks, so the contract changed, basically. And they could be any age over, I think it was 25. So I think actually it's 16 to 25 for college. And then the age, when they're older, they can then come back on a short-term basis. A lot of them were people that lost their sight, and it was a way to help integrate them back into society, get them back into work. So massage was quite a popular course. You imagine it's very hands-on. So a lot of people did that. But yeah, it's basically for 16 and above.
And did you enjoy that? I mean, I'm not, you don't crap on it or anything, but is that something that you found helpful?
Yeah, so I'm a funny one with RNC. Like, I really enjoyed my time there. I've gone through periods in my life where I kind of liked it and not liked that place. But I'm one of those that would say it's a brilliant, brilliant college to go to if you need it. Like, I needed it. It helped me get independence, get confidence, get qualifications. I know people that are visually impaired who have worse sight than me that didn't go RNC that didn't need it. So it's one of those, it's great if you need it, but not every blind person needs it. But I would encourage anybody looking to go to college to, at the very least, give it a look, give it a tour, give it a try, and just kind of figure out for yourself, is this the best place for me? But yeah, no, overall I enjoyed it. As I say, it got me my personal training qualifications and fitness directing qualifications, helped me improve my IT skills massively, got me more independent, helped me learn to cook a bit more, clean, even something as simple as making my own bed. I mean, let's be fair, mum and dad took care of that, so poor little blind boy would do everything for you. All right,
Absolutely.
Go on then.
Well, independence is the biggest thing, especially for me, and that's why part of the reason I'm here and still here is, transportation in the U.S. is crap. And it's very based on driving, and I don't think they want me driving.
Don't think I do either.
I don't think anyone does. I'd love to myself, but the government says I can't. And so being able to get around on public transportation is the biggest thing for me, and being able to feel, even if I'm not completely, because I rely on certain people for certain things, but I at least feel a lot more independent here. What's independence to you as far as getting around these days or doing things these days?
Independence for me is being able to, in a way, not rely on others for everything. There's no doubt at times I need help with stuff. If it's as simple as asking my girlfriend when I'm doing the washing up, is this clean? Just for example, something as simple as that, or can you help me find something on this counter because it's blended in and it's driving me mental. But for me, independence is just being able to just go wherever I want. I can literally get out of bed, get on a train, get to Elephant and Castle, go training. When my girlfriend, I was having radiotherapy earlier this year, I would go to Camden on a regular basis, and at first I was like, oh, come meet me at Marylebone Station, help me get there. She did that once. She was like, just use Google Maps. Use Google Maps, use the transport bit where, I can't think what it's called, but you can use buses, trains. Is it communal? Something like that. But use that part of the app where public transport part, and it really helped. And even something like that where she's just like, nah, do it yourself. Like that bit of independence again, where I'm not very used to London. I know certain parts that I do regularly, but Camden was not one of them. So actually that was a real big kind of example of actually my independence going through there and just being able to get up and go to places that I want to go whenever, basically.
Sure, and I know a lot of, especially in the U.S., but I've seen a couple times here where there's just, and I think it's a different process, different time for everyone. But I've known some blind people, especially, who are just not willing to ask for help. Perfect example of that being my grandmother, who I inherited the condition from. She lost her vision later in life and did not want help, as far as she wanted to be able to do her things, didn't want to use assistive technology. I mean, she was a bit older, but wanted to do things her way and wanted to figure it out and not ask for help. And even here, I see people with canes that I don't necessarily know who are struggling in the station to find their way and don't know where they're going, and station workers ask, hey, do you need help? And I'm like, no, I know where I'm going, and they're going the complete opposite direction. And I think for everyone, it takes a little bit of, you have to take your pride out of it a little bit to know you can ask for help and it's okay. And I think that comes for different people. Do you feel comfortable asking for help? Is that, obviously you ask your girlfriend, to get to the station, but is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think sometimes I'm maybe a little bit too stubborn without realising it, but in my head, there's two types of blind people you get, and this could be a bit of a brutal analysis, but you get the really grumpy, arsey, stubborn, unpleasant ones that you make one comment and they'll take that as a massive insult out of nowhere, and it's just like, whoa, chill out. You get the other side that are really friendly, jokey, laughy, they'll take the piss out of themselves all the time. They don't have a problem with that at all. And I like to be one of those. I'm coming up with blind jokes all the time, to be honest with you. And yeah, if people offer me help, the amount of times where people grab my arm and help me across a road when I've not needed the help and I've just gone, I could just say no. I easily could, but I might cause some problems, might cause offence. Do you know what? I'll let them do it. They're helping me. It'll make them feel a bit better. And it's just easier. I'm not relying on them. I didn't even know they were going to help me. They've just come and gave me a hand. I'm like, all right, fine, go for it. I don't mind. I'm very grateful for the help. When I was in accommodation over the summer once during a placement, I came back into the halls for like 20 minutes, came back out, all of a sudden, right by the halls, neck literally on the same path, was a pole bent, some tape around it, and a couple of fire engines there. I'm going, I've literally been in 20 minutes. What on earth has happened in that time? Fireman goes, do you want to help getting across? I was like, yeah, if you don't mind, please. And he literally just gave me a hand around it all and got me across the road. Like, I'm more than happy to take the help. I think, yeah, I know a lot of people that are very stubborn that won't take the help. And I think some people not make themselves more disabled, but they could help themselves more with their disability than they do sometimes. And I know that is really hard and to an extent unfair for me to say because I don't know everybody else's sight levels. But I'm one of those that will just try and help myself as much as I can, and if I need the help, I need the help. I've got no problem with it at all.
And blind jokes are a whole nother funny part of it too, because I am very much in the camp. There's some gray area, but I'm very much in the camp of I don't care. Like, there is a difference between making a blind joke and then someone going, oh, that blind guy over there. It's all in the intent in the voice, right? Like, when someone's trying to be offensive or being an asshole, and if someone's just being lighthearted, and it's all about intention, I guess. I'm very much loose about it and don't really care. My mom cares more about it than I do, and she gets offended for me.
Yeah.
Do you care at all?
Nope, not at all. Even as simple as like one of my exes, she was like, "Oh, the amount of people that stare at you," and I'm like, "Do they? I don't even notice. I don't really care." Like I'm that guy that on this placements would make these blind jokes to the point where someone's laughing awkwardly as if to say, "Can he say that?" Well, yeah, of course I can. I'm the blind one here. No, you just my boss is always like, "Oh, here he goes again, making the blind joke." I just do it all the time. I think it's character building. It in some ways it relaxes people. You get so many people that are really like sensitive about talking about your vision. I had one guy in a gym that I was at, like a little warehouse kind of gym back in Gosport, and he's like, I don't know how to ask this. And I went, just come out with it. Just be honest. He's like, okay, how blind are you? It's like, to some people that'll sound rude. To me, I don't care. If you want to know, just ask. If you want to make a joke, go for it. I don't mind at all. I'm literally more than happy to go through it, have a laugh with people, anything.
And that's the thing. You rather him ask than sit there and wonder and maybe have a misconception without talking to you, right? Like, because that makes it so much worse if he just says, oh, well, maybe he's faking it, or maybe... No, just come up and ask. And, how blind are you? I mean, that's a very blunt way of putting it, but it works. And I think sometimes people are... Another point you made that's interesting is people looking at you and being worried about people looking at you. That is something that took a long time for me to get over, is being looked at by people or judged at by my peers. Because at the age I lost my vision, it's, a teenager, you're worried about what other people think about you all the time. And so it took a long time. Then when you get a guide dog, everyone's looking at you. You don't have a choice. And so it takes getting over it quickly. Is that something you think about at all, or you just don't care anymore?
No, I'm totally oblivious. I'm that idiot that walks around the streets listening to audiobooks on his headphones when I probably should be listening for cars. I'm that guy, and I just don't care. If people stare, I never notice it. I mean, look, I've got albinism. I've got white hair. I've got white skin. If I'm not wearing a hat, I literally glow in the sunlight, probably. So.
And the cane doesn't, cane draws attention too.
Yeah, it does. The cane definitely draws attention, and the worst ones are people that are walking right to you and don't get out your way, and they're staring at you as they do it, and you're like, well, I'm blind. Why are you staring at me, walking into me?
Now when they're on their phone.
Yeah, or when they're on their phone.
Oh my God.
Especially in London. London's awful for it.
Oh, the rage that fills inside of me when someone will turn and walk into my guide dog as she's walking to try and get out of the way of them, and I get close enough to see that they're on their phone. Rage. The amount of rage.
Yeah. I was in St Pancras a while ago, this was, getting off the underground, going up probably to Sheffield or somewhere, and I've got the guy, I think I've got his arm. Sometimes I take an arm, sometimes I don't. Depends on the day, really. And these sort of maybe teenagers, maybe my age, walk past. One of the guys catches me in the shoulder, and I think he actually spins around and looks really angrily from what I can sort of vaguely remember. I think he spun around. I think his mate was like, mate, he's blind, leave it. I was just like, look, if you're going to walk into me, pal, one or two things are going to happen. Either we're just going to walk away, nothing's going to happen, or you're going to hit the deck, not me. Because there's no way, if you're going to hit me, I'm going down, son.
How tall are you, Dave?
6'3".
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Nothing like that. If they're going to hit me, I'm not going down. And at the end of the day, like, I can't really move. I've got the guy's arm. I can't really divot. And by the time he knows I'm there, realistically, he should be able to move out the way. And we just caught shoulders. And I'm just like, cool story, mate. See you later.
Also, the workers are wearing a bright yellow vest, so usually it's quite obvious that at least someone official is coming through. And if someone's on their arm, there's usually a reason for it. It's not just so. Some
Yeah.
people,
But the canes are handy. So me and my sister went to Southampton, West Quay, shopping. This was a while ago, and she was like, we were getting basically stuff for a holiday. And she goes, I should take you everywhere. It's like passing of the seas. Because everybody sees a cane and they just completely spread out of the way. You've got like a whole 10-meter wide concourse you can just walk through undisturbed. It's great.
I've had people jump over the cane like last second, like it's a hurdle, an Olympic hurdle to try and get out of the way. And it's funny to watch, especially like you say, when you take people who are sighted who watch it happen. And it just makes it easy for them to get through.
Yep, they're funny. We had that in school. There was another girl in my tutor. She was completely blind. She'd have her cane out and people would just scream and jump over it. Just like, oh dear.
So part of the reason I was so interested in talking to you is because you compete at quite a high level in a sport we both love, goalball, and the Paralympics are also coming up. There's probably a lot of people who don't truly understand goalball, and I've been trying to explain goalball to people for 10 years, and I kind of resort to, you got to see it to really understand it.
Yeah.
What's your go-to way of explaining it for people who don't know what goalball is, if you're trying to explain it with words?
So it's quite a long explanation, but before I go into that properly, for those that do listen to this and do watch this, type into Google goalball court and go on images, look at the court, and just to give you an idea, all the lines you will see are tactile. It is string with tape on the top. So you'll see all those lines. It's not like a football pitch where it's painted down, or a badminton court or volleyball. They are tactile lines that allow us to feel the floor and move around. That question comes up a lot. How do you know where you're going? So with goalball, I describe it so the court is 9 meters wide, 18 meters long. The goal is 9 meters wide, so everybody defends. There are 3 people per side on the court at the time. The ball's fairly big, made about 1.25 kilograms, made of rubber with bells in it. And the idea is you have to underarm roll the ball past your opponents, and they've all got to dive and try and stop it. With the added bonus of, you're all completely blindfolded. Some people describe it as reverse dodgeball, where dodgeball you try and avoid the ball. In goalball, no, you want to get hit. You want to get hit by this ball. I'd rather get hit than let it go in the goal, to be honest. And that's kind of how I describe it, really. And for some people as well, if I've got the time, I will get my phone out and just type it on Google, goalball match. Skim through a video, just get to a bit of a game, put the sound on as well, because the sound's really important, because it kind of highlights to them the idea of actually we have to listen to this noise. And that's kind of how I describe it. And then just showing them the video just is a bit of an added kind of bonus, just makes the explanation a bit easier.
And as a neutral spectator, it's an incredible sport to watch even when you're not playing. It's a very high-paced sport that's played, and people don't realize this all the way at the Paralympic level. And there's not many Paralympic sports. I think it's 1, 2, maybe 3 sports that aren't adapted from something else in the Paralympics, like wheelchair basketball. Goalball is its own sport, and I feel like it needs more attention. Can you kind of explain how, because you started playing goalball, how you got involved in the GB, from people who don't know, the Great Britain squad, the national team, what your path to that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do that, you've just brought a very good point into my head. So when I did my dissertation, it involved goalball athletes, and I knew this anyway, but as part of it talked about goalball, and as you said there, it's one of the 3 sports in the Paralympics that is designed for blind people. Goalball's not like blind football, where it's a sport that's been modified for blind people. It is specifically made for people with sight loss. It was created after World War II to help World War II veterans basically rehab from sight loss. And it's so unique in that way, because it's not modified. It's completely original, completely created on its own, and it's one of the best sports you'll ever see and do. It's so exciting to watch, so exciting to play, and just the community is just brilliant.
Before you go to the GB squad, did you do a dissertation that had goalball in it?
Yep. So I did sports therapy as my degree, and if I remember my title right, it was the investigation of a 7-week balance program on static and dynamic balance of elite level goalball athletes. So basically, I used my teammates and a lad from Talent, who was my club teammate, and so basically I had 4 of them with an intervention, 3 without. So they'd all do the Y balance test, which is a dynamic balance test. You basically have to reach as far as you can on one foot in 3 different directions. And I did something called the balance error scoring system, which is static balance, again to test their balance. 4 of them had the intervention to try and improve their balance, 3 didn't, and compare the results at the end. So yeah, I used my teammates for it, which are thoroughly enjoyable.
What kind of conclusions did you draw from that?
No significant difference. There wasn't really a difference between the two, but a lot of university studies end up with that. And realistically, it was such a small study, only 7 people. I'd need to do a lot more people. I'd need to go somewhere like a Paralympics or a World Games or a Euros or something like that and get everybody involved to be able to get a true measurement of it, really.
I can't imagine there's many dissertations out there that focus on goalball. I have a friend who's doing a bit of a dissertation, not a PhD level, but a master's level, who's involving blind sports. And I can't imagine there's many out there, and it's a lot of hard work, especially with what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So when you do your lit review, people describe it as a cone. So you start off really broad and narrow it down. When I got to the very bottom of that cone, it was bringing everything together. So disability, mine was sight loss and types of like senses, like proprioception, those sort of things. Obviously goalball itself, and then balance. And yeah, it was it was really hard to marry everything together and look at, okay, what studies have got balance with goalball athletes involved and what studies involve goalball at all, and there was so few I found, and that was the hardest part with my disc, because it was such a niche subject. I was scraping the barrel a lot of times.
Imagine studies in the single digits. I can't imagine you found many, right?
Oh, 3 or 4 at most, probably. For that bit, like that specific, there may be more studies out there involving goalball for different reasons, but specifically goalball and balance, there was very few. I did find one really good one, though, actually. There was one really good one I was happy with. I think it was maybe 20, 30 years ago, comparing balance of athletes, I think, at Paralympics and non-Paralympic level, I think. And
really?
I found that quite useful.
Huh. I'll have to go find that, because anything comparing the Paralympics and Olympics fascinates me. And also the perception of what the Paralympics are versus the Olympics versus the Special Olympics, which is a completely separate thing. That's fascinating.
I think it was like Paralympic players compared to like non-Paralympic players, so like people who maybe didn't get in the Paralympics, but I'm happy to at some point go through my disc, find that reference, find the article and send it to you.
One of 50 pages, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, one of like 50, 60, 70 references. Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, that makes my head spin just even thinking about it.
You should see my reference list. It's terrible.
So how'd you get involved with the national team?
So obviously had that training thing at that Paralympic show. Then I stopped doing goalball for a little while, got more into my football. For those of you that don't know, I support the best team in the world, Portsmouth Football Club. You heard it here first. If you're going to support anyone, support Portsmouth.
Future Premier League winners.
That's the one. Yeah, and I went to RNC, got back into goalball then with Aaron Ford, the ex-GB women's coach. Fantastic coach, really, really good coach, knows his stuff, can't rate him highly enough. And I played one intermediate tournament with RNC, scored 14 goals actually, sorry. Nearly took myself a goal out there. And then
Important
literally, yeah, exactly. Then on the Monday, he goes, do you want to play elite? So this was, I think, the first time RNC had an elite team. For those of you that don't know, basically there's 3 levels of English goalball: novice, now known as regional; intermediate; and elite, now known as Super League. And elite levels where you've got your GB athletes, your high level players. And so, yeah, I started playing elite and intermediate for them that season. I had the shot, but my defence wasn't quite there. I've gone through a few phases of being scared to be hit by the ball, to be fair. It didn't help. And I started doing some kind of youth stuff with GB, and I think it was 2014, around that summer, there was a Goalball World Cup in Finland, and I got selected to be a part of the GB squad, like youth squad for a youth camp. So there's 5 of us, and we had a camp, and we played against a German youth team, a Korea youth team, and a Finland youth team. And that was really good, really, really useful. And then I got put into the main squad for a little while, and we had, say, 6 months to go before a Euro seas, and at this point I was like 17, young, immature. I don't mean like going out on the booze or anything like that immature. I was quite an anxious teenager. I wasn't mentally ready at that time for that kind of step up, really, looking back.
No one's the person they want to be at 17 years old.
No, exactly. And I just wasn't ready to maybe take that on, and I was quite scared of being hit by the ball for a while, and in the end I was meant to go for a tournament in Spain, just a friendly tournament. I accidentally hurt my hand playing football, just in goal, just having a bit of fun at RNC, and emailed them like, oh, I'm really sorry, hurt my finger, might not be able to go. Someone came down from GB, I can't remember what their role was, maybe performance lead or something, not quite sure. It was like, we think this is too soon for you, this tournament. So like, okay, fair enough, obviously gutted. Didn't then obviously go Euros. Went to another like youth/development tournament, so a couple of youth players and a couple of lads from the main squad that were maybe not a pecking order, but weren't maybe top 3 or 4 in the team at the time, came for obviously get some game time. It was in Denmark. Was probably a bit childish, bit mature in that tournament, so maybe needs to do a bit more learning. I obviously wanted to go back to the squad after that, and they still felt it wasn't the right time and too soon. So I then kind of decided to just leave goalball completely at that point. Like, not leave goalball, leave GB completely at that point, just stop with it. And then this was kind of during my second year at RNC, and then my third year I met my ex, decided for a little while that I didn't want to play goalball anymore at all, just wanted to do football. And then got back into goalball towards halfway through my third year of college. She then left the college at that point due to stuff happening at RNC, and then I, shortly after that, left after getting ill and missing an assessment for massage that I did at the time. Played for a team after RNC called Phoenix Blaze for a year. Didn't play the whole time. Played a couple of tournaments with them, and then ended up stopping playing goalball. When I got my ex, I wasn't really myself. Like, I don't know, I just became a bit of a different person. It's hard to explain. It just wasn't who I was. I became a bit more, don't know, just kind of not me, really. Maybe more arsey, more sensitive, just a completely different guy, and not what I believe in or stand for kind of thing. And so at this point, I'm living in Shrewsbury with her for a little while. I'm out of goalball. Ended up getting married and having 2 kids. Genius. Not the best idea. I just rushed things. I was like 18, 19. I just rushed things. My argument was I was looking for stability because the summer before, my dad and my mum had already split. He was moving. My mum had moved out. My grandparents were also moving, and my uncle was moving. And so we left Gosport, which was my home for 16 odd years. And I went from that house to my grand's old house, to then my nan's house, to my grand's new house, to my dad's new house, all in one summer. So lots of chopping and changing. So I kind of, in a way, searched for stability in a way with her. And then, yeah, so ended up moving in with her. Really wasn't a good idea. A lot of my family feel like I was being manipulated and I guess brainwashed. And yeah, they weren't wrong. Things didn't work out between me and her. Things got really rough. I ended up going down to visit family one day after we sort of split, 'cause we were still living together at the time. And while I'm down there, she's like, oh, by the way, while you're down there, you're going to have to find yourself a place to live back up here. And at this point, I just started to rekindle a relationship with my family, because we did have a big falling out. And yeah, my grandparents were like, look, this is your home. You can stay here with us. So at this point, I'm also doing an access course at Shrewsbury College. So I'm just entering my second year of that. So I'm spending 3 days a week travelling to basically Shrewsbury College. So here's where I get back into goalball. Here's the main part again. Sorry, it gets a bit long-winded. And yeah, so I reached out to Winchester and asked if I could come and play goalball. They were like, yep, that's fine, you can come up. Started so in January 2019, I think it was. Started training with Winchester, getting back into the sport, and at my first elite back, I got a chat with Aaron Ford again from RNC, and you know, this is during one of the most difficult periods of my life, and goalball just brought so much joy back to me and really helped me. And he said, look, come to RNC, come and train with us whenever you want. So then I started going to RNC and training, so I added an extra long journey of travel. The good news was that Hereford was on the same train line as Shrewsbury. So just a little bit quicker, a little bit like earlier on the line than Shrewsbury, which helped. So I started training with RNC, and then tournament 2 for Winch, well, my second tournament, plundered in about 35 goals. Get an email from Faye a little while later going, look, we're doing this kind of find the next thing in Birmingham, no pressure, just a bit of fun. Do you want to come? It's like, yeah, sweet, I'm up for that, let's do it. So I played in that, had a great time. They were doing these find the next tournaments and like talent camp things at the time, and there was
being
one.
the coach of the GB men's squad.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, Faye being the GB men's coach. She's always been the coach from as far as I've been in goalball, basically, or known. Well, since I was at RNC, basically.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so I was with a different Hex at this point, and her mum was like, "Look, if you want to get back in the GB squad, just send Faye an email. Just tell her. Be honest." So I sent Faye an email, completely honest, and said, "Look, I want to come back." And so I offered to help her unload the car at this Find the Next camp in Winchester that summer. And she goes, "Got your email. Basically, there's 3 spots up for grabs. We're looking basically everywhere. So people from what was called the England Talent Pathways, kind of under 23s, youth guys, anybody within goalball now, or like just complete outsiders like me, basically a wild card." A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call going, "Hi Dave, we want you in the squad." I'm like, get in, absolutely buzzing.
And this is the GB men's squad.
This is the seniors, yeah. So at this point, I'd never played for the GB men's squad, like seniors. I played youth and development stuff, but never seniors. And so I've been selected. I'm like, brilliant, get in. And so I was like, oh, I'd heard about a tournament in Belgium called the Flemish Cup from a GB player. And they're like, oh, they're going to it. So I said to her, oh, what about that tournament? What's happening with that? She goes, well, we want you to go. So instantly, I'm all of a sudden making my debut for the senior squad in Belgium as well, in a senior tournament. And
What year was this?
This was still 2019.
Okay.
So within about a month of getting back in the squad, I'm in Belgium playing for the team. And it's just kind of grown and grown from there, really, for me.
Wow. And so you've been with them since 2019, right?
Yep.
Now in 2024.
Yep.
What's it been now that you're settled into the squad? Well, first of all, I want to say it's great that your grandparents got you back into the sport, because I feel like I took a small break from goalball during COVID for a couple of years and just kind of lost motivation. And when my girlfriend pushed me back towards it and I joined the DC team, it's like finding a lost love in goalball is, it's always been an amazing sport for me, and I wish I never stopped playing to begin with for a couple of years. So I'm glad that your grandparents pushed you back towards it, because now you're here and it's all for the best.
Interestingly, I wouldn't say they pushed me back.
No?
It was me who did it on my own accord, but it was them offering me their home that allowed me to get back into it, and that was really important. I knew Winchester quite well anyway. One of their coach was an ex-GB player who I did train with when I was briefly in the squad before. And a very, very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, Patrick Dunn, he was playing for Winchester. Admittedly, while I was with my ex in Shrewsbury, me and him did fall out. But when I came back, he just put out the olive branch straight away. Look, if you need to talk, mate, I'm here for you. And yeah, knowing him really helped as well, coming back to Winchester. And so 2 other people, Rosie and Scott Murphy. So I knew Rosie from RNC. I met her on my welcome day kind of tour of RNC, and her boyfriend the year I started there had finished and he went to uni, now husband, but she got back into contact with me. She helped me get back into goalball with Winchester, and they said, look, come to ours, come train, just do some throwing with us, get yourself back in. So I did a couple of weeks of throwing with them on a Saturday before I even turned up Winchester training. And I think it was mainly those 2 that really helped me get back in the sport, because they just opened out the olive branch. I made a best friend in Scott, and they got me back into goalball just by letting me come and throw with them, train with them, get to know them better. It just really helped me, and this was basically the toughest year of my life. All the stuff going down my ex, it was the hardest year of my life for sure, basically hitting rock bottom. And I had no counselling, no therapies, nothing like that. All I had was my friends and family beside me, and without them, I wouldn't be here now. So although, say, my grandparents didn't directly get me back into goalball, they've, along with all my friends and all my family, played such a big part in not only putting me where I am now with goalball, but putting me to where I am now today. Just their support in the background just massively, massively helped.
it's always about the sport. That's what gets you there, and it's all about the small steps that get you there. It's not just one big jump to get where you are today. And it's great that you have that support system. So now you've been with the GB squad for 4 years, 5 years, I guess. My math's wrong.
Has it been that long? Blimey.
Yeah. How do you feel like your development's gone in the past 5 years with the national team?
I would say interesting. So, obviously, when I came back in, I was kind of the new guy a little bit, one of the three. I'd probably had the most experience as far as playing goalball, out of everyone there. I started playing, say competitively in 2013 with RNC. Obviously, I played a bit in school before that, but I class RNC as my competitive start. And I've been told by so many people I've got so much talent, so much potential, and as good as I am, well, say as good as I am, like, although I'm a good player, there's so much more. Like, I'm nowhere near the finished article. Like, there's teams like USA, there you go, Tim, big them up for you, Lithuania, Ukraine, Brazil, China, that just wipe the floor with us, and I'm sick to death of it. And we're I've got so much potential that I want to be able to beat these teams. I want to be able to help GB win these games, and I want to become a player a bit like that Moreno for Brazil, who just plunders in goals for fun. There's a lad, I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Oh, Genrik, that's it, for Lithuania, just smashes in goals for Lithuania for fun. And that's where I want to get to. I want to get to that level. And it was interesting. It was before Euro Bs where Faye gave me, it was another tournament in Portugal, just before the Euros, which was in Portugal. She gave me what I call a positive rollicking. So it was very much, it wasn't a you're crap, if you don't sort your act together, you're out. It was if you get your act together, you could be one hell of a player. You could be dangerous, were her words. You've got so much potential. If you get your act together, you can seriously wreak havoc. And it kind of just showed me that actually even the coaches believe I've got this potential. So when I go with my teammates like Dan Roper saying it, for the record, he is GB's best player. Even though he says that, just hearing it from a coach, it's a total game changer. And, I started to work a little bit harder, train a bit more. I was obviously still training and working hard, but I just started to up the ante a bit, up the intensity, kind of switch my head on a bit more in a way towards it. Trying to juggle uni and GB can be a bit tricky sometimes. Got the Euros, score. So I came on the first game, and the very first thing I did was score a goal. And this was my European debut. So the first thing I did, first shot, was just score. And no one's ever taken that away from me. The following year, went to Lithuania for a friendly tournament. At this point, this is last year, at this point, we're building up to the World Games. And Dan, our best player, and Caleb, who scores quite a lot at the moment as well, weren't able to go. And they were like, right, this is your time. Faye goes to me, what wing do you want? So I'm quite versatile. I've played left wing, right wing, and I've played centre. So if you imagine, like, on the court, a little triangle, the very top of the triangle is your centre, bottom left is your left winger, bottom right is your right winger. Best way to describe it. And I went into, and I've never really known where my best position is. And I instantly just went, right. All of a sudden I knew my position. And in that Lithuania tournament, I was the main guy. I plundered in 20 goals. And I call that tournament my breakout tournament. That really hit home the potential I had. And I'm scoring against teams that I've never scored against. Ukraine, never scored against them. Scored against Lithuania in a club tournament, yes, but not in internationals. And, never played Japan, scored against them. And it was just an incredible tournament for me, just as that breakout. Go to the World Games. Game 3, come on against Lithuania, and I score our only 3 goals. And I start every game after that, scoring in all but one game. And just the last couple of years have just been for me, it feels like a skyrocket in my playing ability, where after that chat with Faye, things have just taken a massive upward curve. And it needs to be said now, massive shout out to Fen Tigers Goalball Club, Dan Roper and Emma Evans for inviting me to something called what was the Super European Goalball League. I've forgotten its new name, but it's basically, I think it's the ECGA, but I can't remember what that stands for.
Some acronym, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's basically the Goalball Champions League. Fen Tigers a few years back won the Elite League, and they got offered to play in it. And they said to me, Dave, you interested? And this was, I think, 2 years ago. 2022. It was after COVID. I remember that much. And it's against teams like Soltinez, which is basically the Lithuanian national team, 3 Finnish teams, which combined have the international Finland players, a Brussels, a Belgium team, and many, many others throughout the tournament. And the reason why I'm giving them this major shout out is because without them taking me along, I would not have the international experience I have now. I'd only been to 2 international senior tournaments before that with GB. That was it. I didn't have a lot of international mileage, I call it. And then going with Fen Tigers, I've been to, say, 4 or 5, maybe 6 tournaments with them now. And they've just given me so much more international exposure, which has really, really, really helped me improve and become the player I am today. And same with Aaron Ford and RNC. If he hadn't offered me to come train with them, I wouldn't have got so much sharper and probably wouldn't have been able to get back in the GB squad. And again, shout out to Winchester for getting me back in the sport in the first place. I know I now play for London Elephants. Very grateful to be playing for them. But if it wasn't for Winchester, Adam Knott, Scott Murphy, Rosie, Patrick, people like that, I wouldn't be back in the sport now and I wouldn't be thriving. So I owe a lot of gratitude to a lot of people, Faye, Alex Bunny, a lot of people within Goalball for where I am now and how much I'm progressing as a player. And Russ Sparks from Elephants, obviously, for letting me join the team.
It sounds like the kick up the ass, for lack of better terms, that Faye gave you was really a kind of pivotal point in your goalballing career. What kind of advice, I don't know if you've gotten any from, Michael Sharkey, one of the guys on the London Elephants that we play with, who's, been there and done it as far as Paralympics now, and is a little bit older, what you might say, but more experience. Has he given you any advice, or what kind of advice, I guess, from athletes that you've gotten that has really helped along the way, aside from coaches?
I think some advice, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything specifically Sharky has said, but I think it's just having him around and just anything he says in general, just the way he is. He's always trying to encourage you, always trying to give you advice, even feedback on one night is like, Dave, you've beat me like 3 times tonight and I've not been beaten for weeks playing. Just stuff like that, and just like trying to help me throw a bounce slightly differently, releasing out a different part of my hand, things like that. And just he's always encouraging, always trying to help, and just having someone with that experience on your team regardless is just vital. I think some advice someone like, for example, Dan Roper gave, he's always talking about throwing practice twice a week, get throwing, get your arm in, and he is totally right. And you don't get good over time. It takes time, and sometimes you need a bit of a peg back, or I made a bit of a stupid comment in my first tournament with GB, I'm going to score more goals than you, Dan, this tournament. And I think he maybe took a bit of offence to that. If he did, I completely understand. And it's like, you don't just rock up and score goals. You've got to work for it. You've got to work hard. You've got to train. He's not as good as he is now by sitting on his ass doing bugger all. He's as good as he is now because he works his ass off. He trains his ass off. And I think sometimes it's not what players say, it's what they do. It's how they carry themselves. And people like him, people like Sharky, always encouraging you, always supporting you, and they work their absolute socks off.
It's about walking the walk, not talking the talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many players sometimes will chat complete and total twaddle. We know a couple like that, don't we, Tim?
That's a very British phrase.
Complete and total twaddle.
No, would you say chat twaddle?
Yeah, chat total bollocks, mate, basically.
Good Lord, man. Anyone who's American listening to that is going to be like, what in the world did he just say?
Just saying it's grass, not grass. Just saying.
Grass?
Grass, yes.
How many A's are in there?
Actually, it depends where you're from in England, to be brutally honest, because some say grass and some say grass. If you're southern like me, then it's grass. But yeah, I think we know players that just chat total rubbish, but in a day, it's not about what you say, it's what you do. And I think Dan, again, like, he's always trying to help players, and he's one of those that he knows the way he shoots works for him. It's very, when he rotates, when he does a spin, a lot of people bring the ball up and down. Dan brings it around himself. He brings it around his body. It works for him. But he knows full well that might not work for someone like me or you, Tim, for example. And he's not going to say, do it my way, do it like this. He will make you do it a way you're happy with and feel like it's best for you. But he will help you get to that point. And it's just that support you sometimes need from people.
What do you think separates, because all these national teams are really good, but there's always, is it a small bit that separates them? Is it just a small bit of technique, quality? Is it the power? Is Lithuania just more powerful than everyone? What separates these top national teams from each other?
So here's the thing you need to learn about us British, Tim. We're very polite. We go to these tournaments thinking, oh, I say, chaps, we could win this quite comfortably. But I'll tell you what, we'll be nice and we'll let these teams have the win, shall we?
That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly that. No. It sounds like a typical point the finger, but funding. And I know for a lot of people it's a bit of a cop-out, but we realise that the world's like, the gap's there. It's not massive, but it's big. It's not massive, but it's obvious. There's a gap between us and these top teams, and we're improving a lot. We really are. We've got out of the Bs. We've just stayed in the As for the first time in no idea how long, quite a while from what I understand. But it partly is funding. How often can you train? Some of these teams are training weekly, every couple of weeks, monthly, regularly. I think that's part of it. I think potentially consistency of people as well. I think a lot of teams that if they don't change their team too much for a few years and they get settled, they get kind of not complacent, but like they build up the relationship with each other, build up the understanding together. That can also help. And I think not just funding, but training. Like whether it's you train as a team all the time or you work on stuff on your own at home, doing your throwing practice, doing your gym work, doing whatever it is, they can all make the difference. Technique, possibly. I think there is a bit of a theory between some people that fully believe rotation shots are faster than smooth, for example. Some people will also tell you that bounce shots score a lot more internationally than smooth shots. So for those who don't know, a couple of terms. If I say rotation, it's basically a 360 spin. If you do a straight shot, you're just running straight. And
the point of
like
that
bowling.
is to generate more momentum, generate more power.
Exactly. And then if it's a smooth or a bounce, a smooth is where the ball just rolls along the floor nice and smooth, really fast. A bounce is where you hit it into the ground and it basically bounces across the court. They're a lot harder to defend because you have to be a lot higher in your barrier. So you're basically lying on your side at a back, like arms outstretched, legs outstretched. With a bounce, you've got to be higher. You've got to get your top arm kind of above your hip or leg or head area, depending on where the ball's going. So I think a lot more teams will score with bounce as well. And it's, to an extent, is how well can you bounce. If you've got really good bouncers in your team, you might score more goals. So it's not one specific thing that makes these teams better necessarily. But things like even pool of players to choose from. I know America have, when I went to a tournament in Finland just before COVID with GB, they had 2 teams of 6. We have 8 players in the main squad. I think it's 8. Yeah. They had 2 teams of 6. Explain that to me. But and Brazil train 100 and something days a year, I've heard. And I know Japan, I think they basically live together in a center. They work, I think, 3 or 4 days a week and train the rest of the week. I got chatting to them in Lithuania about it. So many teams have chances to train all these big pools to choose from, which undoubtedly can have an impact. But in a sport like goalball, and especially in this country, where to close that gap, it's more, yes, you need the support in place, you need the structure in place, you need the funding in place from your governing bodies, from Sport England, whoever it is. But at the same time, it's down to you to make the difference as well. You've got to prove why you deserve the extra funding, prove why you deserve more training days, and show that the gap is closing.
I think the sport of goalball needs more funding in general, but that's just my personal opinion, I think. And I think things like the Paralympics help put more eyes on it, which, helps over time. I think 2012 helped. I think Rio helped. I'd hope Tokyo helped, and I hope Paris helps. But, and funding for sport and all sports really is difficult, and especially these sports that aren't football or American football or baseball or tennis, they struggle for funding, and that trickles all the way down to these international tournaments, to everything. And I think it'd help a lot of these national teams because you want the highest level play possible.
Yeah, exactly. And so for all you very, very rich billionaires out there listening to this, don't buy a football club, don't buy Chelsea or Man United, invest in goalball.
Goalball's where it's at.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it is true. You want grassroots goalball to improve. So take you back to my RNC days. We had 5 teams at elite. That's it. A couple of years ago, we had 10. This year, we have 8. And you can see the sport's expanding. The sport is growing in this country. And actually, from before when I came back, the standard had improved. and the standard's continuously improving. Regional's more competitive, intermediate's more competitive, elite's more competitive. You've got to just keep improving, and the sport is growing in this country. More teams are forming. I mean, look at London Elephants. 2 years ago when I started training with them, we had like 4 or 5 people. And I was still at Winch, but I was in High Wycombe near London, so I trained with Elephant and Castle. And we only had 4 or 5 people, and I was thinking, what am I doing here? It was so few people. About a month later, we have 6 or 7 coming, and now we're stocked to the gills with people. We've gone from having an intermediate team only to having a regional team, an intermediate team, and an elite team. So that's a really good example of goalball growing, and there's more and more teams forming and competing. And yeah, it's just funding. We only get 3 or 4 tournaments a year. If we could get 1 or 2 more, that could be massive.
When was the last time GB competed in the Paralympics? Do you know?
Yeah, 2012.
2012.
Yeah,
okay.
I got that one right. I was trying to think 1990s, Oh no, 2012.
It's been a while.
Yeah. The women have come very, very close on a number of occasions, particularly through the Europeans. They've been very unlucky not to qualify before. We've not been in that position to be able to qualify because you have to qualify through the A's in the Europeans. And even the World Games last year, yeah, we had a guaranteed shot at Paralympic qualification, but we didn't get close.
Was that disappointing? Because I think that was good for the country as far as goalball having the World Games here in Birmingham, right?
Yep. Well,
And
Coventry technically. The whole World Games was Birmingham, but the goalball got put in Coventry.
Okay. And so was that a big deal for the country and for goalball to have it hosted here in this country, a Paralympic qualifier?
Yeah, massive for goalball specifically. So I think only 3 sports were qualifiers. Judo, maybe blind football, and goalball were the qualifiers, I believe. But just to be able to host it in general was huge for the country. It's such a big sporting event, and for goalball, yeah, massive. Just to get people more aware of the sport and to bring people in to watch and cheer and just to get more awareness out there. I know, people could say, "Oh, the men finished 13th." It's disappointing. We knew it was going to be tough, and I don't think in the games we played, we didn't roll over and have our bellies tickled. We didn't do that at all. We didn't give in. We kept fighting throughout every single game. We gave it our all, and there was a couple hundred fans each game we had, and I know it sounds like very few people, but you'd be amazed. So like
for goalball, that's good.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, so I used to have a season ticket with Portsmouth with my dad, and after every game we'd be there clapping the players into the game. They come over and clap you back, and I used to love doing that. And to be on the other side of that for the World Games, where I'm walking over to the crowd and I'm clapping them while they clap us, doesn't matter how many people are there. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now. It's just one of the most unbelievable feelings, and just the overall atmosphere was fantastic, and just great to see so many people coming out there to support. And you almost don't realise, like, yeah, we talk about goalball not being very well known in this country, but the people that do know it, the support is incredible from everyone, friends, family, loved ones. They just want to come see. They want to come watch the sport. They want to see you play, and they want goalball to improve. And yeah, we didn't finish that high, but it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I think for so many people, they'd say the same. And it was just such a fantastic tournament to be able to host and be a part of.
When you hang up your shoes, boots, whatever you want to call them, in your goalball career at the end of the day, what would you like? Do you have goals that you want to say, I've done that, I've been to a Paralympics, I won this award, or is it more just enjoying it while it lasts and whatever team accomplishments come with it, you'll take?
A little bit of both. So obviously living with my ex and stuff like that, there are times I thought I'd never be back in goalball. There are times I thought I'd never do this again. And from when I was even a lot younger, I'd had international aspirations, even being even being an England football player, stuff like that. I've always wanted to try and get on the international stage from when I was a teenager, basically doing blind sports. And even when I've had like slight classification issues before as well, trying to classify, and times like that where you have to basically classify to be able to play, like how blind are you kind of thing. And again, there are times where I thought I may never get to these high levels, and I never even thought I'd make it to a Euros, let alone a World Games or a Paralympics. And yeah, I'd absolutely love to get in the Paralympics. Absolutely love it. But for me, it's a bit of both where I want to get Paralympics, obviously. But if I retired now, to say that I've been at Euros, I would have been at the Euro A's. I was selected, but I was injured, so I couldn't play. I've been in the Euros, in the Euro B's. I've been at a World Games. I played in that. To be able to say I played in 2 major tournaments for GB, and for potentially a good 4 or 5 of us, that World Games could be the biggest tournament we're ever going to play in, potentially. And to be able to say I've done that is just incredible, even if I don't get the Paralympics. Just to be able to turn around and say that, like, I've had, in my view, I've had a brilliant opportunity and a brilliant time doing it, and I'm proud of even just even being able to do that, to be honest.
Can you explain to people how hard it is to get into the Paralympics for goalball?
Very. So
How many teams,
I think it's now 8.
Yeah, it's 8 teams, right?
Which makes it more complicated. And how many regions are there? You've got the American one. You know more than me on that one.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I'm going to let you go before I make myself sound like a fool, but I believe it's the North Americas and South Americas, yes.
That's it. You've got North America, South America. You've got the Euros. You've got the Asians, and I think the Africans. So you've at the very least got around 5. The World Games is a Paralympic qualifier as well, so that's 6. And I believe the World Championships as well. And they might be, I think it's top 2 in the World Championships, maybe? Because I heard that because Brazil and China were top 2 in the Paralympics, they qualified for the World Championships. And then because they finished top 2 in that, they then qualified for Paris. Partly why they weren't at the World Games. And then the World Games, only 1 team would qualify, the winners. And then, Europeans, only 1 team. And I think all the rest, it's 1 team. But if, for example, obviously, because Brazil and China finished in the already qualified, if either of them won the South Americans or the Asians, it would then roll down to the next team. So Japan men won the Worlds. So again, it would roll down from there, for example. So it is extremely, extremely hard to qualify for these sort of tournaments, partly just because the level's so high. This year, for example, there's only 2 European teams have qualified. France, because they're hosting it, which means I got my maths wrong somewhere. So France are hosting the Paralympics. They've qualified. And Ukraine qualified through the European A's. So it's super, super tough to get in unless you qualify. Unless you're hosting. If you're hosting, you can just cruise.
So being over here and competing in goalball, I get labeled the Yank or the American, which has been funny to hear, especially going to these different tournaments. Can you tell me the story that you told me when you ran into the U.S. squad the one time?
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah, I think I just remember it now. So it was the tournament just before the Worlds in Germany with GB. It was me, Dan, and Joe Roper just walking around chatting. And one of the players, just from America, goes, you guys still chatting and bitter about the American independence? Ha, ha, ha. And we're just there like, what the hell is he on about?
And the Revolutionary War, obviously.
That's it. I was just like, what's he on about? We weren't even talking about that. And one of their coaches comes up to us and goes, is he being dumb? I'm really sorry. He's just being dumb. And we're just like, what the hell is this clown talking about? We're just chatting about a goalball, mate. What are you on about?
Was that your impression of an American? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, that was terrible, I know. I watch too much TV. I need Tim to teach me. That's what I need to do.
I'm working on it. So, I'm nowhere near. I've subbing with you guys in the elite squad. What advice would you have for someone who's striving to make the next step in goalball, whether it's go from, someone who takes it somewhat seriously to try and take it even more seriously? What's it take for someone to, take the next step in goalball?
Training. So if you've got clubs near you, get to training sessions. Train as much as possible. I don't necessarily mean go and throw a goalball every single day. You've got to have rest and recovery, things like that. But if you've got multiple clubs that you can get to, go and train with multiple clubs. I've trained with 3 or 4 clubs at once before. I've trained at Winchester, trained at RNC. I've trained with Elephants, Winchester, Fen Tigers. I've trained with loads of clubs, and they don't care. They don't mind you train with them at all. So go and train with multiple clubs. Speak to players. Speak to players at the highest level, and sort of, what can I do to improve? What can I do? So, for example, with Tim, I've looked at him and gone, we can definitely do some more with your shot. He does 3 steps, so he's nowhere near what's called the higher ball line, where the ball has to hit the floor before that line. He's nowhere near that, so he can get a lot more run into his shot to then generate more power. So he's talking to players that know the sport really well, that can help you improve your game and develop your game. But that's it. It's just practice, going to training with different clubs as much as you can, putting yourself out there for all these different tournaments, whether they're internationals with clubs or they're just, such as the Malmo Open, for example, or if it's just club tournaments, put yourself out there and just seek advice from players.
What would you say to someone who's recently lost their vision or has been blind but hasn't been involved in blind sports and doesn't really know what it could do for them, and maybe, just trying to find their way? What would you tell someone that's looking, if that makes sense?
I would say reach out to other blind people, not necessarily just for the side of sport, but reach out to other people with vision impairment, get their experience, get their support. I'm always here for anyone that needs to talk. I can get Tim to put my details on the website, whatever he's got, for people to contact if they want it. Just get talking to people, who have the vision impairment, who've gone through the same, who understand it. And if you are interested in sport, ask to go with them. Even just come and watch. Elephants, we'll happily have someone just come and watch. If you want to get involved, come and get involved. We're more than happy for that. Every club's more than welcome for that. Just come and have a little look, see what you think of it. And yeah, that's what I say. Just talk to people who have vision impairment and just kind of put the feelers out there, really, and just kind of inquire about it, because it doesn't matter what level you are or whatever sport you want to play. There's people out there that will help you.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing now as far as a job, because I find it interesting what you're doing.
So currently I work as a fitness coach at the university gym I graduated from. I am looking for sports therapy work, but that's still a bit ongoing. But yeah, so I'm mainly just looking after the gym, setting up for classes, providing personal programs for people. It's a little bit like personal training, but it's a one-off session, and then they have their program on a card they can go through, and just kind of providing general kind of training assistance and support for them. And I do a little bit of coaching as well. I'm not specifically a coach, but I just shout at people at elephants, basically.
When you're doing fitness training, and it's, I assume, sighted people, right?
Yep.
Is there any weirdness that they kind of give off on their end? Any hesitancy that you're blind and you're giving them fitness training? Because just knowing how people can be sometimes, I would hope not, but sometimes people are like, oh, what? I'm getting fitness coach from this blind guy, but you're more than qualified. Is there any of that?
Not at all. I get loads of people. I have a couple of people that consistently come and ask me for advice. Like, whenever I'm in, they'll always ask me for advice. Yeah, I think there's none of that really with me. They're more just interested in, okay, how do I use this equipment, or how can I do this exercise properly? Or I think the worst one I get is when I'm sometimes like, because I'm watching someone's technique, just out of nowhere, I'm like fixing the wipes to try and, obviously we have them to make sure the gym stays clean. I'm fixing one of the wipe station things, and someone's looking at me funny. Basically, I've just been looking at them training, and I'm trying to work out, because something doesn't quite look right. I'm sort of staring, trying to figure it out. Then I've got to do the old, oh, sorry, visually impaired kind of thing. But no, there's never been any issue at all. I even give advice to my fellow colleagues. I had a lad a couple of days ago. He's still a student doing, I think it's S&C. And he wants more advice on how to improve his shoulder mobility, and I was going through some exercises with him. So I don't really have that awkwardness at all. I think actually people absolutely love me for the knowledge I have and just the support I will give, because I make it clear to people, look, even in inductions, we can't show you everything. If you need any help, just grab any of us. If you ever need help, just come grab me. I will happily give you a hand with anything. I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. The most embarrassing things because they have access cards, their card's not working. I say, oh yeah, just go off and train, I'll bring it back to you. Or I take the card and sort it out, and I turn around, I'm like, where have they gone? Oh God, where are they? And it takes me half an hour to find them until they put the hand up wave. I'm like, oh, there you are. I did give one guy the wrong card once, and he was like, that's not me. I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. And he actually pointed me to the right guy, but they looked the same to me. That's the one thing, is it's really hard to recognise people when you're visually impaired. Yeah, that's quite embarrassing situations.
Will you go and will you say visually impaired mostly as a term? Because I've kind of rotate between, with the amount of vision I have, blind is a very all-encompassing term. It's quicker to say, obviously, and sometimes it's just more recognized, but visually impaired is more accurate. Do you go in between, or you?
Yeah, I'm very in between. If I'm like taking the mic and stuff like that, it's more blind. If I'm describing myself, it's more visually impaired, especially when it's like in the gym. I tend to be more accurate, but if I'm doing sort of general terms, it tends to be more blind.
Yeah, fair enough. I find it difficult because I have enough vision. I passed for a while. I don't know if you know the term passing. It's very common, especially in the U.S., where I have enough vision that I could walk around, my house pretty fine, and even some of the local streets, and without a cane, without a guide dog, and get around that way and try to look sighted and mirror being sighted just because I wanted to fit in, or whatever else. And when in all reality is probably a dangerous thing to do, and it took some time to get over. But now I kind of make a full 180 and now be completely comfortable saying the word blind, just because it gets more people on, yeah, he needs help, or he's asking for help, or needs this. And like we talked about earlier, even if it's too much help, it's better than nothing. I don't know what your thoughts are as far as it's a strange one.
Yeah, it's definitely strange, but I think, look, whenever people see a cane or a guide dog, they don't look and go, oh, they have sight problems, oh, they're visually impaired. The first thing that goes into their head is blind. People automatically assume I'm blind, and sometimes, I think even your friend just now who helped me to the toilet, I had to say, look, I can just follow you. And I have loads of staff members at train stations, do you want to take my arm? Like, no, I can follow you, not a problem, I'm happy to follow. And I think a lot of people just automatically assume you can't see at all. And sometimes it has the advantage of when you're standing in a train and someone comes up to you and goes, oh, excuse me, sir, there's a seat here. And just like, oh, thank you, because you didn't know it was there, for example, or something like that. So it does sometimes have its uses not uses, but like it kind of helps when they think you're completely blind, just to get that little bit of extra support that you might need, basically. But yeah, I think to most people, if you've got a cane or a guide dog, you're seen as blind rather than visually impaired. And sometimes you have to then explain, going back to it, the whole what can you see kind of thing.
A kind of funny question I'm going to ask that I've had debates with other people about is, especially I'm asking you this because you were born blind, if there was a magical surgery that came out now, would you take all of your vision? And the reason I ask you that is because I've found generally, this is not scientific at all, but talking to people who have lost their vision later in life, like I did, 11 years old or earlier or later, take it back in a heartbeat because it's something you had, you remember, and you want back, even if you've accepted your situation now. But I've also talked to a lot of people who were born blind and are like, no, this is how I've always been. I don't need to change it. Would you take, if there was surgery to get all your vision back, or all your vision to 2020, would you take it?
Nope. So
I thought you might say that.
The thing is, like, in a way, yes, I could drive if I had full vision. Yes, it would make it easier to get to places for work, rather than look at a job and go, oh, that's 2 hours away on the train or the bus. Sod that. I could get there in 40 minutes in the car. Yes, it means I could do more pitch side work with sports therapy, which I've really struggled to do because pitches are massive. But at the end of the day, it's not even just because, oh, I'm used to it. It's just because it's made me who I am. Without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have had the experiences I had today. I wouldn't have my 2 beautiful kids. I wouldn't have my lovely girlfriend, probably. I wouldn't know this fabulous man opposite me now, for example. Like,
oh, you flatter me.
It makes you who you are. Like, yeah, you're not defined by your visual impairment or your disability, not at all. But it does impact who you are, and it's how you take the fact that you're disabled, how you move on with that, really, that can make the difference. I'm that guy that takes the piss all the time, and if I wasn't visually impaired, what would I take the piss out of? So I definitely wouldn't change it, because it helps make me who I am, and it's who I am today. Like, I wouldn't be me without it.
David Scott, thank you so much for doing this.
Not a problem, mate. My
You're
pleasure.
awesome.
Thanks for having me.
You're awesome.
Cheers, dude.
All right.